Hi, I'm Talia, founder of Workweek Lunch, and what you're about to watch is the first episode in my new expert series that I'm doing this year. Today's topic is intuitive eating, and I brought on Kelsey Miller, author of Big Girl, to be my guest. You're going to learn a lot in this 30-minute interview. You're going to learn what intuitive eating means. You're going to learn what the beginning of your journey might look like and kind of the pitfalls to expect and how to overcome them. You're also going to learn the moral food lessons we learn as a kid that kind of screw us up later in life. Before we get started, I want you to know there are show notes in the description of this video where you can find all the links to books we mention and Kelsey's social media profiles, and all the information you need will be in there. So without further ado, here's Kelsey Miller. So yeah, let's just jump in right now. Kelsey, can you tell me a little bit about you, where you're from, what you do, and your mission?
Yeah, I'm a writer, and I'm from New York, and I live in Brooklyn now, and I wrote a memoir called Big Girl, and that came out in 2016. I'm working on my next book right now, and in 2013, I launched a column as a staff writer at Refinery29 called The Anti-Diet Project.
So how did that come about, the Anti-Diet Project?
That came out of just a personal, something between an epiphany and a panic attack moment for me. An attack, I've described it before. I was, like many people, a lifelong dieter, had my bouts with disordered eating as well. And I didn't really know any other way to be, not only to eat, but to just sort of live my life. It was just the lens through which everything else existed. I was like one of those people, that I think we all, hopefully not all, but a lot of us do subconsciously, thinking things like, my life will really begin at X weight, or after X pounds, or, when and if, and it's all predicated on how I'm eating and the number on the scale. And of course, nothing ever changes if when you those goals are actually accomplished. And it's a hamster wheel, it's designed that way, really. So I was 29 and I was in the middle of that, one of those cycles. And I was on staff at Refinery29, and I was on a press trip, which is this thing that happened, the journalists do in the short version is you go off on a trip and you learn all about different kinds of companies and products and stuff like that. And I was they had arranged this warrior workout thing for us in the woods. Oh my God. So I was running through the woods, and exercise can be a cathartic thing. And it was just this sort of just emotion and thought just bubbled up inside of me, and I hit a wall. I was unable to physically keep going, and I was just done, figuratively as well. I was like, I can't do this anymore in so many senses of the word. I was just done with dieting, and I realized none of the magic that I had thought would happen had happened. All the good things in my life had happened in spite of my obsession with dieting, with manipulating my body, and they'd happened a lot later because I'd been so focused on that.
Right.
And nothing good had come of this, and there had to be another way to live. And I had to learn, because I'd been, trying to change my body through food or lack thereof my entire conscious life.
Absolutely. Me too. I mean, up until a certain point, I think so many of us go through that. It's sad that it's a part of, in a way, growing up, and it shouldn't be.
Of course.
But we all experience this as women, especially.
Yeah. And it's not even an affliction that we're all individually given. It's just the way the world is, right? Yeah. You're supposed to be unsatisfied with your body. You're supposed to want to make it better.
Right.
If there's not a problem to be solved here, what are you doing with your life? Basically, is the message that we're getting every time we step outside the door. Right?
Basically. So wait, when you got back from your press trip after hitting this wall, is that when you started the column?
Yeah. So I had heard about intuitive eating before, because, when one diet failed, I would look for the new one, the one that would really work. Right.
Yeah. Right.
On, Google and Amazon searches and stuff. And every once in a while, the internet would put intuitive eating in front of me, and I would be like, that sounds like a really great idea when I lose 100 pounds, or maybe just 80. You know what I mean? Right. I have to converse, and then I can learn how to eat like a normal person. It was I just wasn't ready for it. If you're not ready to hear that kind of thing,
That's so true. Yeah.
So I knew about it, and I was just thinking like, well, great. Now I have to relearn how to do everything, starting with eating. And I need some help. So it just sort of came to mind. And I thought, okay, I'm going to get the book. I'm going to find a specialist in this. Luckily, I live in a place where there are a lot of RDs and
Right.
nutrition professionals, many of whom do specialize in intuitive eating. So I was able to find somebody, and I basically went to food therapy for a year.
Wow. That's awesome though. I think that really committing in that way means a lot. Like you weren't just half-assing it. You went to someone else to get help. Like
Yeah.
that's really a huge step that I think a lot of people should take, and it can be hard to like admit that you need help in that way.
It can. And I'm also, I mean, here to tell you, it's not accessible to everybody
No.
because all therapy is expensive. All
Right.
nutrition counseling is expensive.
Absolutely.
I think that's the best thing to do if somebody can do it. But if not, I always like recommend that people seek out like support groups and things like that, because those exist. They exist
Absolutely.
out in the world and they exist online.
Right.
Because I'm sure for many people, as was the case for me, I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. I knew if I was just me in a book, I would just put the book down,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
go back to the only way I'd ever known. So I started doing all that, and I started writing the column at the exact same time. I pitched it.
Okay, so you really took us on your journey through the column. That's awesome. Good.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's so for someone who has never heard of intuitive eating, how would you define it?
I mean, it sounds so like woo-woo, which is
But yeah, when I first tell people, it's always like, oh, so I could just eat M&Ms all day. Like that's the first. I'm like, well,
that's the second thing. The first thing people are like, and they look at you like maybe you're in a cult, because that's what it sounds like. And then they're like, oh, well, if I did that, then I would just eat pizza all day until I exploded. And of course, both those things aren't true. So
what is it really?
I would say the easiest way to explain it is like diet deprogramming. It's just learning how to eat like a normal person again, using all your own, instincts and common sense with which you were born. A lot of people describe it as like eating like a 2-year-old. And 2-year-olds, of course, are, exploring food and learning and like figuring out what is food and what is not. And also they get really excited about, certain foods for a really long time. And so I think we take a lot of lessons from 2-year-olds, but we're also adults and stuff like that. So it doesn't mean that all common sense and logic goes out the window.
I like the diet deprogramming thing. I never heard that if you describe that way. And I really think that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say, I saw you looking suspicious of the eat like a 2-year-old thing, but it's true. It's what I mean by that is like to eat without the sense of punishment or without the sense.
Right. Because a 2-year-old doesn't know an Oreo isn't as good as a piece of spinach or something. I don't know. Like,
of course, what they're eating is without emotional attachment to it. You know what I mean? Because we learn emotional attachment to food pretty early on, like probably right around that age, because good foods, bad foods, obviously parents are trying to get their kids to eat all sorts of things and stuff like that.
Right.
It's really easy for us to that's how early I think it starts, is right. I'm really not trying to sound like I'm judging parents, because I am not a parent.
No, right.
But what I mean to say is that you learn very early on that you should be eating certain things. You know what I mean? And that some things
take priority. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's really, really easy to start thinking this is a good food and therefore I am good if I eat it. That's a bad food. I'm bad if I eat it.
Right. Right.
That's like probably the earliest, food thing that we learn. And it's so hard to unlearn that if as you get older, the message doesn't change. And for a lot of us, as you point out, especially women, it doesn't.
No.
Intuitive eating is really just about taking out all of the diet jargon and just like getting rid of that sort of false belief system and just letting you eat like a normal person again.
Right. And do you think that eating like a normal person looks different for everyone?
Yeah. I mean, what I mean by normal, I don't mean like you have you measure your meat in the exact same, this precise ounce or something like that.
Right.
and you do, you eat in like this, like the way that we say on our Western, North American food chart and stuff like that. That is not what I'm saying.
Right.
What I mean to say is that, yeah, you eat without, attachment, to you as like as a person. It's just food is just food. It's neutral.
Right. Okay. So just like eating for the function in a way, and still pleasure, but like
pleasure is a part of it. Yeah.
pleasure is for sure. No, I agree. And yeah, that's true. But it's like when you're eating intuitively, you're saying that I am not feeling a certain way about what's in front of me that could be like I'm an amazing person or like I'm terrible and I need to work out right now.
Yeah, that's one example to say like, yeah, to not treat it as something like, I mean, a lot of people treat food like, or exercise as like opposite food, right? And they're just not the same thing. And, there's a lot of like good and bad lingo and guilt-based lingo that we talk about food, like the guilt-free brownie, which is like, what?
I try really hard to avoid that, like in my Instagram and blog.
It's so hard not to even imply that certain things are better than others.
Yeah.
But like, if you practice it, it's definitely possible.
For sure.
Yeah. So it's about like, taking the all the stuff that we have imbued into food and just like letting that go and letting food be food. Because then, an Oreo is an Oreo, a cookie is a cookie, and a carrot is a carrot. And like, they all have their place and stuff like that. And they don't actually have any effect on who you are as a human being. And they're not animate and care about you.
It sounds so simple, but so many people struggle with this transition. And I want to hear a little bit about what happened after you started seeing a food specialist. Like, what was the beginning of your journey like?
I mean, a lot changed. At the beginning, I mean, the sort of foundation of it all is having permission to eat. And that's really, really tough. It's something I've had to learn, and sort of do over again a number of times, because like permission to eat across the board, like a lot of us walk around with this sense of permission to eat as much. I don't know what your like good food is. Like for me, one of my good foods was like green apples. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know. It was just like one of those things that got in my head as like in my dieting days is like an okay thing to eat.
And then now it's like so arbitrary, but it's like
apples were good and things like that. And then even things like carrots were bad, because I mean, I learned like in my like early one of the phases of like low carb, I got it in my head about carrots and carbs or something. I mean, crazy stuff like that. So I had to practice giving myself full permission to eat things, and carbs were a big part of it. And one thing that does often happen for people when they're first doing that, when you're just sort of let off the leash, is your brain is kind of like, it goes into that, in between diet mode where you're like, I can do whatever I want. And it grabs all the things that you've been restricting for so long. And so I did, but I ate a lot of just like potato-y things and carb-based things. And I freaked out because I was like, it's true. I am going to overdose on pizza, and I'm going to have to call 911. That's going to be the story of me. And I started this column, and everyone will know that I overdosed on pizza.
Oh my God. That's funny.
I talked to my, my counselor about it, who's an RD as well. She's a dietitian as well as an intuitive eating specialist. And she was like, and I was keeping track of my food, which was also really hard to do in a non-diet way, because it was
right. That's really interesting. I never heard. So
I was writing down what I ate, and I was writing down like any judgments I had about the food, or like any sort of stressful thoughts any thoughts that went into like making the process. Like,
I want to try that.
Well, because then you can see like anything that you're still wrestling with. You know what I mean? If you're stressing out.
I'm still wrestling with something. I'm still wrestling with cereal.
It's hard.
Like, yeah. I like, no, I want to buy cereal for the house. And then I like walk down the cereal aisle, and I'm like, I'm not sure when would I eat this? I don't know. Like,
I know there are things that I still have to, do over again with permission and stuff like that. We all have things that are particularly difficult.
Right.
So I was tracking all these things, and I'd bring them in when I meet her once a week. Her name was Teresa Kinsella, by the way. And she would be like, it's not really that many carbs. I mean, yeah, you're eating carbohydrates. It's true. Do you feel like you have permission to eat carbs yet? And I was like, I mean, technically, yes, but it wasn't internalized yet. And so she was like, I think you just got to roll with this. This is just what happens. And I rolled with it, not really being able to trust myself, but being able to trust her, at least, that I wouldn't overdose on pizza. And, lo and behold, it didn't take that long. It took like, I don't know, 2 weeks of what I perceived as like manic carb eating, and what was really just probably slightly above average carb eating. But it took about 2 weeks for that to just sort of stop, because what happens is, your brain gets the message that the deprivation is gone.
Right.
And you don't have to hoard it anymore. Then you can, when that hoarding instinct is gone, then you can have all your natural like food cravings that come up.
Right.
Because that sense of like forbidden fruit, right? If you get that chance to get at that forbidden fruit, you're going to grab it and grab it and grab it. When it's no longer forbidden, that whole system just sort of falls apart.
That was a huge thing that happened to me. Like when I just was like, actually, no, I'm not going to limit how much bread I can eat. It's stupid. And then I just got to a place where I'm like, this is how much bread my body's cool with. Like there's a point where I feel kind of like I ate a rock. And there's a point where I feel like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, I think that's so important. And I try to talk about that a lot. Like, just don't, like, if you lift those restrictions, those options become less attractive in a way. Like,
I mean, everything becomes sort of equally attractive at any given time.
Right.
Because sometimes you're in the mood for bread and sometimes you're not.
Yeah.
And when they can all sort of come down to that baseline neutrality, then there's no restriction or binge instinct,
Of course.
So that was one of the big things for me. Yeah.
What was like, so a couple after that phase, after that like 2 weeks of manic carb eating, what was the next thing that was really challenging that you kind of had to overcome?
Oh gosh. I mean, I wrote a whole book about this.
Right.
Sort of had to come up with.
Well, I mean, we're all going to read your book, so.
No, I'm just trying to think in like the order of how things happened. I mean, it's not super linear. It's like,
right.
It's a whole process, but I'm trying to think. I think learning to eat mindfully was
interesting.
a biggie for me.
Okay.
Big challenge and a big like life-changing challenge, I would say. And certainly it changed my food preferences in a very startling way.
Interesting. When I think of mindful eating, I think of like you're eating without any electronics and you're just kind of focused on the food. And is that like what it is?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that people would maybe have a slightly different definition, but no,
right.
I think that's really for me, it wasn't even called that when I was, I made a sort of my counselor suggested that I try just at least one meal a day without distraction, even if it was like a snack.
And that, so you, in practicing that, that's like something, it's a skill, right? Like you have to actually consciously.
Yeah. I really did. And I hated it.
Yeah.
I hated it.
Oh my God.
It still drives me bananas because I don't ever want to not be distracted, right?
Right. We want to be multitasking all the time. And I
want to be multitasking all the time. And I want to be entertained all the time, like everybody else in the world. And I never want to be, without my phone.
Right.
So,
I'm guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that.
Really hard. But, like I said, it really made a huge difference. Even that like one meal a day thing,
what was the difference exactly?
Well, one of the things is that it made me notice my hunger a lot more, and it made me notice my fullness a lot more.
So
I wasn't just sitting there like the meal is done when the food is off my plate. It was just,
right.
It made me really, really know how much food I needed and also the variety of foods I needed. And it made me recognize things like, if I don't have protein, I mean, theoretically all meals should have like a variety of foods, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really that's the one I felt my best. And that's when I enjoyed meals the most as well.
Interesting. So you did learn to enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, a meal, I learned things like, this particular meal, like I was really hungry one day because I let myself, and I just up on a million things. And I took out my headphones and I did my mindful eating. And I was like, I was tasting how gross the like reheated salad bar food was for the first time ever. I would have normally, like in the past in my dieting days, I would have seen that as like a cheat meal, like an exciting meal. And I was like, this is just a stomach ache waiting to happen. I'm not actually enjoying this.
Right.
So it changed the kinds of foods it changed my ideas about the foods that I thought I liked. And it really taught me a lot about, like what I like to eat, how I like to eat. And just like,
yeah. Okay. I think that's really awesome. And I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think learning these like little pieces of it, of the journey, of your journey, and how we can apply it really helps. And like eating mindfully definitely probably looks different for everyone. But I think that result is so important, of just like understanding how certain things make you feel, and that the meal doesn't end once the plate is empty. That's amazing. Like,
yeah. And I actually, the more I'm thinking about it, I think sometimes the term mindful can be sort of off-putting to certain people, because
it is to me.
Kind of
I don't like to use it.
Yeah. I mean, it's become kind of a buzzword, and it's lost a lot of its meaning, unfortunately, for the time being. So I think it's the same for everybody to say eating without distractions. Everybody knows what that means.
Right. Okay.
Sometimes it's not doable. A lot of the times it's not doable. A lot of the times it's not preferable. But when it's possible, I think everybody understands what it means to eat without distraction.
Awesome. Yeah. I love it. I want to just switch gears for a second, because my audience had a couple questions about intuitive eating that I would love to ask you, just to get your input. So a common question was like, people have attempted intuitive eating, but they slip back into dieting.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think this is part of the journey? Is this normal? And did you ever experience that?
Oh, sure. I mean, diet mentality is, you can be, doing all the sort of practical changes with intuitive eating, but it really is like an internalized thing. That's why it's so challenging, because it's not like with dieting, it's all external and there's very clear rules and measurements. And with intuitive eating, it's all just kind of inside. So yeah, it's really, really easy to slip back into diet mentality. I'm often on the watch for that. I think for me, the key is to not like freak out when that happens.
What are the clues? Because that's another question. Like, what are the clues that you're slipping back into it?
I mean, I actually don't want to even say like, you can like, there are so many behaviors in dieting. I wouldn't say like, it's the kind of thing where if you notice you're doing something diety that like it's all over, you have to start from scratch and stuff like that. For me, for example, one thing that happens is like, I get stressed out about a certain kind of food, or I find myself thinking a lot about whether or not I'm going to eat something, like really kind of just thinking for a little too long about making the decision whether or not I'm going to eat something. And I think, yeah, that's because I probably don't have full permission to eat that right now. So I'm going to take the time out to really teach my brain that it has full permission to do that. That happened to me a couple summers ago with ice cream, which is a big, tricky one for me.
Right.
And I realized I was doing this weird thing that I actually wrote about in the book. So it's like, it's an old habit for me, which is like buying ice cream constantly and filling out my freezer with it and not even actually eating it all that much, but feeling really compelled to have it.
That is really interesting. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So is one of your clues that?
Yeah. I mean,
you know yourself, so you're going to watch for it.
Now I am, but I didn't back then. I was just like, man, why am I doing this whole thing again? And I thought, okay, well, I just don't have full permission to do it. So I wrote little things like Post-it notes to myself and stuck it on all the tops of the ice cream. And then I put like a picture of ice cream on my phone, like with messages like anytime you want, or,
that's awesome.
Loud, really, really hammered the message home. And then whenever I had the instinct or the inclination to eat ice cream, I just like had a little bit before I even like let myself think about it too much. And I mean, that took like, that was a matter of like days before I was like, okay, I'm over it again.
Wow. That is so cool that you did the Post-it note and phone thing. I think that's like a step no one thinks to take, but that it's like, you do need to see those messages, like see them, not just think them.
Yeah, you do. Because think of all the messages that you're seeing.
Right. No, we need that counterbalance.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
If you find yourself stressing out over a particular food, then you know that maybe that's a toughie for you.
Right.
And
okay.
Just on that, don't blow it up until like I have failed at intuitive eating.
Right. There is, I mean, I feel like in a way there is no failing unless you commit to dieting again, like, because that's going to happen, right? Because like it's so ingrained in us that we will slip back into it and we will have these thoughts.
Absolutely.
Right. Do you have time for a couple more?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So another common question is, can intuitive eating align with fitness goals? That's a big one. Like people who, want to be able to like lift a certain amount or I don't know.
Well, I mean, it's funny because a question like that, and I get questions like about fitness a lot too. And I think it's really, it just indicates that somebody still has that sense of like fitness is like exercise is opposite food. And fitness is, I think, one of the trickiest things. I think it was actually even trickier for me to relearn. And one of the things that I think I am still learning again, like having to like start from scratch and relearn what exercise is. Because,
Right.
That world is even more focused on weight and on body shape and on things like that. So it's really hard to shake that messaging. But I mean, if you want to like lift a certain amount, I don't see any reason why intuitive eating wouldn't be compatible with that.
I think people see that the just with the knowledge and, we both have worked in media. We understand like people are like counting certain macros to be able, if you lift this much, it's like you should need to be eating this much to grow muscle. And it's like that type of thing, I think. And it's like, does that fit with intuitive eating? I don't really think it does.
But I mean, the macros thing, I don't know about that, but I'm not like a,
right.
Or a CrossFit person. I am somebody who's very physically active now. I really actually like my workout. I work out about 5 times a week now, actually.
Awesome. What do you do?
Oh, I do all sorts of stuff.
So you like keep it really varied and.
I have kept it really varied. I've been sort of doing my same old routine for a little while now, but I just, I'm a writer. So, and I'm inside all day and I can, if I didn't have the chimney, sometimes that's the only place that I have to go after writing for like.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah. So
I don't go to the gym between my work, like my office and my home. I'm just going work, home. Like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could talk about.
Okay. So no, that's a good answer. It's kind of just like, with the fitness thing, it could be part of that stuff still ingrained in you. But like
one more thing, which is that again, I'm not a lifter, like a bodybuilder or a CrossFit person, but I know that there are people who are in that world who do intuitive eating. And in fact, actually, the counselor I've been talking about, the intuitive eating counselor, she is also a specialist in sports medicine and sports nutrition. I'm not sports medicine, sports nutrition.
Right.
So a lot of her clients are athletes.
Okay.
So I think it absolutely is. I just think it's probably about coming at it from a different way. I think, the same way I get questions a lot from people who are like, I have such and such, disorder or whatever that prevents me from eating a certain thing, so I can't do intuitive eating. And I think it's obviously trickier when you are, prioritizing things or perhaps need to like limit certain things because of a medical condition, but it's not inherently incompatible. It just requires, unfortunately, I think a lot of extra effort to reframe, whatever it is you're doing with the food. So it's not about weight, or dieting or restriction and things like that.
Right. I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like the mind reframe that needs to happen.
Yeah.
If you want to pursue both, which is possible.
Yeah.
Okay. I think I have one more. Okay, so this is still a huge question, and I'm not a dietitian or nutritionist, so I cannot tell.
Where am I?
Yeah, so right, so we both aren't. But people ask, "What do you eat when intuitive eating?" They don't like. It's like, what are you supposed to eat? Because it's like not a diet. There's no rules in a way.
I'm sorry. I really don't mean to laugh. I get it, because why would if somebody's never heard of this?
Yeah.
Why would they know? The answer is anything, everything. There's nothing's off the table. I would say don't eat things that are expired.
Right, things that'll like harm you.
Yeah, don't eat poison. Objects. I'm sorry, I'm being glib, but like, yeah, no, it's sort of the thing.
That's what I thought too. And I think it's hard to that's part of that transition where you're like, if you're following a certain diet, there's yes and no foods. In intuitive eating, it's all yes. So it's like, what do I eat?
It's all just food. Yeah.
Right. I had one fun question for you. Oh yeah. Before we go. If there is a recipe that I was going to develop just for Kelsey Miller, just for you, what would be in it?
Mm. Oh my goodness.
What would like the main ingredients be?
Sauteed onions. I think
What was the first one?
sauteed onions.
Oh, okay.
I think everything can be made better with sauteed onions. Ooh. I'm kind of.
You're feeling savory.
I'm a big, yeah. Well, I'm hungry. I'm getting hungry for dinner now. I'm a pretty big fish person.
Okay.
Tonight I'm going to say something sauteed onions. I think some sort of like a broiled salmon-y kind of thing. I like a salmon with like a crisp edge.
Yes.
I'm really very hungry for dinner. And then, like I love like a wintry, crunchy green.
Oh my God. I'm going to make this like this weekend. This is perfect.
Like I'm a big winter vegetable fan, but like a cabbage moment is my kind of thing. I don't know if that would really necessarily go with my
It could. It's your recipe. Anything goes.
Yeah. I would like some cabbage, please.
Got it.
Yeah, and maybe like a baked potato, because if I don't, it's, I can still go through that feeling of, you see how I omitted the carbs, so I kind of forgot about it.
Right. It's not an afterthought. Carbs are good.
Yeah, I know. I never forget my dietitian saying to me one time, like, your brain needs carbohydrates, right? Like your brain needs it to work, and you need your brain to do your job. And I was like, fine.
Give me a baked potato, fine. Thank you so much for coming on and like shedding some light on this, especially for me. Again, I'm not an expert, and I really appreciate the help. And where can people find your writing and your book?
Well, you can read my work on Refinery 29. The column is a bi-monthly column, and it goes back to 2013, and it's all there if you ever want to go back. My book is called Big Girl: How I Gave Up Dieting and Got a Life is the subtitle. You can find that basically everywhere where you get your books.
We'll definitely include a link.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Ms. Kelsey Miller. That's MS Kelsey Miller. And yeah. Oh, and I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook page where I post my stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'll link to all of that. Thank you again for coming on, and yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
All right. That was my first interview of my new expert series. I really hope you enjoyed it and you learned a lot. In the comments, I would love to hear from you what your biggest takeaways were, or if you have any questions that you'd love for me to answer. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.